relationship counselor Elizabeth Overstreet. Everyone has this vision in their mind of what marriage is, how romantic they want it to be, how they're going to raise their children, what the core values are going to be in that relationship. But often we don't tell each other totally what that vision is.
Hi, everyone. Welcome back to another episode of Vet Talks. Man, me and Kate took a little bit of time. We've been away for a bit, but you know us. We got to take our breaks, and then we come back with something fabulous.
We've traveled to Mars, Jupiter, Uranus, Saturn, pretty much the whole solar system, and now we're back on planet Earth.
Kay would love that, actually, because he is an astronomy enthusiast.
Yes, indeed.
So if there's some trips to the moon, I don't know, my husband might be gone for, how long does it take? A couple years, 3 years?
Well, with technology now, anyway, we can discuss that.
Okay, well, we won't go off on tangent like we just did. But we wanted to welcome a guest to the show. Her name is Emily Sanders. She is a licensed marriage and family therapist. I'll let Emily tell you a little bit about herself and what she does, but we are very excited to have her on the show today.
I'm so happy to be here. Like you said, Elizabeth, I'm a marriage and family therapist, and I'm licensed in the state of California. And so I love working with people. I do a lot of work with individuals and couples, but the way that I treat my clients is always in the context of their relationships. So obviously we're going for individual and personal growth, but a lot of our personal growth means growing relationally as well. So absolutely. I love it. Yeah.
And our relationships, they affect everything. The relationships we have with our family, our friends, our significant others. So we can cultivate these good habits of building healthy relationship dynamics. I think it just helps you to have a better overall holistic type of life in general as you interact with different people. But I was curious, this is an off the cuff question. What is your sweet spot when it comes to being a therapist? What do you enjoy the most?
Oh, my sweet spot. Okay, so technically I'm a psychodynamic therapist, which means that when I'm working with my clients, I'm paying attention to what's happening right now presently. But I'm also going backwards with my clients as well, and I'm exploring past relationships. Obviously, parents are major, but relationships that could also be cultural influences, religious influences, all of those things, and figuring out why are we the way that we are. Attachment is a really big deal for me. So no matter what kind of work I'm doing with whomever I'm sitting with, I'm always thinking about attachment, meaning how did this person's primary experience, typically with moms, we carry a lot of weight and we get a bad rap for that. But how did parental influence shape the way that we show up in the world? And so that being said, I really like doing long-term, more analytic work. So
okay. I like that you brought up kind of the parent effect, because I think that gets underestimated in how we turn out as humans, because that's our foundation, right? As people. And then how do we know when those foundations are healthy or not healthy? And then how do we change that precedent of maybe what we've lived through or experienced, and what has been in a family for generations. So, one of the things I think that's hard when people are dating and getting in relationships is kind of understanding each other. And there's a lot of misunderstanding that happens initially when you're getting to know someone. A lot of assumptions are made. How do you talk to your couples about bridging that gap? Because I think every couple gets to a point, right? Sometimes where things aren't great and you're getting through some barriers, but then you hit that power struggle piece and there's just things you just disagree on. How do you kind of walk them through that process?
Well, in general, the beginning of a relationship ought to be quite fun and euphoric, and the connection and the navigating challenges comes easily, right? Because you're in love and you're infatuated, and your tolerance for your partner is extremely high. And the longer that you're together and you start facing more conflict, the tolerance goes down. And so a lot of couples can find themselves really frustrated. And I think it's important. The first thing that I tell anyone when they're on the phone with me, even deciding if they want to work with me, is explaining, are we allowed to cuss on this podcast? Do we cuss here?
Yeah.
Okay. I'm not a vulgar person, but in general, I do tell my clients, you have your own personal crap. your partner has their crap, and then you come together and you create crap. And so it's really helpful in couples to sit and think through what is yours and what is mine, and how does what we each bring into this relationship in many ways just kind of explode off of one another. For most couples, the most sensitive, sticky parts are where trauma interacts, right? We can trigger each other, and that's not even on purpose. It just happens. So it can be really, really painful for couples.
Well, sometimes wouldn't you agree it is triggered on purpose? Knowing your significant other's, past traumas. I know Elizabeth uses this term trauma bonding. I think it's a term. Yeah, and yes, sometimes it is triggered, mistakenly. But then there are times where its intent is initial. It's on purpose. When individuals tend to purposefully trigger that trauma. How would you address that? Now, again, I do agree that mistakenly it does happen. But how would you address when Sally or Johnny, they're purposely always triggering one another's past traumas?
Well, I mean, my first question, no, let me back up. I think there is a very small subsect of people that are extremely manipulative and out to weaponize past hurts against one another. In general, I would say those people that are truly at the core vindictive, and you do not want to be in relationship with those people, that dynamic will never ever shift. Now, for your average couple where deep down at the core, they're not vicious, they're not out to be nasty, but when they're in these high conflict moments, yes, then they'll weaponize or take cheap shots, as I call them. Typically for most couples, they're at a point where they're extremely desperate. They're desperate to get heard. They're desperate to be understood. And this panic that wells up within them, brings out in many ways their own trauma, right? In general, when we're in a safe relationship, we should be sharing our sensitive pockets with our partner. And even in heated moments, because I love this person, I'm not going to weaponize their past against them. Or again, take cheap shots. So if there is a couple that repeatedly finds that they or one person is acting in a way that's super ugly and hurtful intentionally, we do have to figure out, is there some sort of personality disorder going on, or some kind of deeper issue? Is there a mental health issue that's happening here? Or let's explore that desperation. Even down to couples like laying hands on one another that by and large are not aggressive people, right? Does that make sense? I've had men or women say, I can't believe it. Like, I shoved my husband. Like, how could I do that? I know that's so wrong. You would never believe, I hate to even say what I called my wife. And outside of the heated moment, there's so much shame.
Let me ask you something. You did use the term, and I really like how you explained, your answer based on my question. But you used the term that I'm just hearing so much now. And in my opinion, it's almost like a cop-out, mental health. Now, I know there are individuals who really struggle with mental health. I've seen it in my own family dynamic. I've seen it with other individuals. But honestly, mental health, we know that can be a chemical imbalance a lot of the times. But if we're only going to define mental health as that, then all of us, have mental health challenges. My whole point is this: we all are, as human beings, we decide what we are doing, what we want to do, what our intent is. But for some reason, I'm just noticing it's always related to mental health. We've had mass shootings that have taken place. And I know we're talking about relationships, but when you said mental health, that triggered something. When do we cross the line and say, okay, no, this person was just a bad individual. They knew what they wanted to do and they did it. We can't use the mental health piece as a cop-out.
So it depends on the couple. Like, for example, you can have somebody who struggles very intensely with obsessive compulsive disorder. And so you can have a partner that has wildly vicious and torturous, intrusive thoughts. And so that can impact the relationship if, let's say, they're their theme of OCD is relational. They could go and ask their partner 30 times a day, are you sure you're not cheating on me? You still want me? Are you sure you're not cheating on me? You're not cheating on me, right? Like, can I just look at your phone? Are you cheating? There are certain types of mental health issues that can heavily impact the relationship. And so but just to throw out a blanketed mental health effects, yeah, we have to be careful. I mean, most recently we have the Depp and Heard trial, right? Where mental health is pulled out. And so there's a lot of nuance. When I am working with couples who have a pretty significant mental health issue, that we're talking a pervasive mental health disorder that will not go away, it's so important that couples understand, how does this mental health concern affect my behavior? How do we research it together so that we can label those, particular set of actions or behaviors and put them in the right context, if that makes sense. And then if we're talking personality disorders, that's a whole conversation in and of its own.
Yeah. What if you have two people in a relationship where you have one person that has a secure attachment style and you have an avoidant? And when there's conflict, the secure person may have to seek out the avoidant to constantly kind of restore balance to the relationship. Mm-hmm. How do you work with that couple to help them kind of, balance it out? Because that's a lot of pressure, when one is constantly trying to solve through and also come back and make it better. How do you help that person who's avoidant? Because maybe they've been through things, significant things. Usually that's why people are avoidant. They've been through significant things. So it's just a natural reaction to not want to deal. How do you kind of walk couples through that exercise of kind of creating balance on both sides?
Yeah, well, do you know what the kicker is, Elizabeth? Is unfortunately, typically what you have is somebody that's very anxious that partners up with an avoidant. And somebody who is secure has a lot more emotional bandwidth to be able to tolerate some of the avoidance, right? Without taking it personally or seeing it as a failure of themselves. They are more apt to trust when the person pulls away that they're going to be okay and that the person that they love will come back. But unfortunately, a lot of times we have somebody that's very, very anxious that partners up with somebody that's avoidant. And so when the avoidant person pulls away, the anxious person is terrified. All of their abandonment stuff is just inflamed. And so a lot of times they're pursuing hot on the tail of that avoidant individual, which, as we know, the avoidant person feels overwhelmed. It triggers their own panic. They feel cornered. They feel trapped. And so it is a very delicate dance of sitting together with couples. And I use emotionally focused therapy. So we're bringing in the attachment piece and we're wanting to help build empathy for each partner as to why they're behaving the way they're behaving. And so when one partner starts to hear, oh, okay, this was your background. You had to pull away to be safe, or you've never learned how to handle your feelings. And okay, this makes sense. So it's not just me. This is how you react when you're in distress. Now the anxious person can have a little more empathy and say, you know what? Okay, you pull away and I'm here waiting for you. I feel uncomfy. I hope we can talk soon, but I get it. You take your space. And we're helping the avoidant person understand, oh, when you pull away, your anxious partner feels abandoned. They don't know where you're going. Hey, if when you pull away, why don't you tell them you'll be back in an hour so they know that you're going to come back for them? And so we're trying to make little pivots like that. We're trying to demystify why each person does what they do in the relationship, and how can we build compassion for each person's woundings. And so when that happens, it's beautiful, and there can be earned security when each couple shows up to do that work.